All right, so I read to you guys Epictetus' The Complete Works, all my highlighted parts that I deem to be the most important parts of this book. But there's actually 5 books in this. This is the Enchiridion is in here, and then there's 4 books in Discourses. And some of the 4 books in Discourses have chapters that I thought themselves were so worthy of reading the whole entire thing. So I highlighted those, and I've got little sticky notes for them, and I'm going to be rereading those right now. All right, so this is from Book 1, Chapter 4. It's called On Progress. A person who's making progress, who has learned from the philosophers that desire is for good things and aversion is the response to bad things, and also that contentment and equanimity are attainable only if his desires aren't disappointed. Where his aversions are concerned, he doesn't experience what he wants to avoid. Such a person has uprooted desire from himself altogether and set it aside, and feels aversion only for things that are subject to will. That is, he knows that if he seeks to avoid anything that isn't subject to will, he'll meet with it at some point in spite of his aversion and be miserable. Now, if virtue holds out the prospect of causing happiness, equanimity, and contentment, then of course, progress towards virtue is also progress towards each of these states. After all, whatever the end may be towards which perfection in anything conducts us, is always the case that to progress is drawn near to the end. How is it then that while agreeing that virtue is like this, we look for progress elsewhere and demonstrate how much progress we've made in other areas? What is the product of virtue? Contentment. Who is making progress then? Is it the person who's read many of Cyprus's treatises? Virtue can't consist in understanding Cyprus, can it? If that were so, we'd have to acknowledge that progress consists in understanding many of Cyprus's work. But in that case, we'd be acknowledging that the product of virtue is one thing, and at the same time asserting that progress drawing near to virtue is something else. What about someone who's already able to read Cyprus's work without any help? Oh, yes, indeed. You're making excellent progress, man. Wonderful progress. Why are you mocking him? Why are you distracting him from an awareness of his deficits? Shouldn't you just show him what virtue's product is so that he can understand where to look for progress? Look for it in the things that are up to you, you pitiful creature. Where is that? In desires and aversions, so as not to be disappointed or to encounter what you want to avoid. In inclinations and disinclinations, to avoid going wrong. In the application of assent and suspension of judgment, to avoid being deceived. Look first in the most important and essential places. But if you're fearful and downcast in your quest for perfection, in what sense are you making progress? So show me what progress you're making in this regard. Suppose I were talking to an athlete and said, show me your shoulders, and then he said, look at my weights. You and your weights can see to yourself. I want to see what the weights have done for you. Get the treatise on inclination and you'll see how thoroughly I've read it. That's not what I'm trying to find out, slave. What I want to know is how you manage your inclinations and disinclinations, and your desires and aversions, how purposeful, intentional, and prepared you are, whether or not you're in harmony with nature. If you're in harmony with nature, prove it to me, and I'll agree that you're making progress. If you're out of harmony with nature, go away. And rather than just interpreting books, write similar ones yourself. And yet, what good will that do you? Don't you know that the whole book costs only 5 denarii? Do you suppose then that an interpreter of the book is worth more than 5 denarii? So never look for your work in one place and your progress in another. Where is progress to be found then? And if any of you has turned away from external things and is focused on cultivating and working on his own will, so as to bring it into accord with nature. Unpraised free, unimpeded, unobstructed, trustworthy, and self-respecting. If he has understood that anyone who belongs for the or tries to avoid things that aren't up to him compromises both his trustworthiness and his freedom, and is bound to find himself too changed and tossed up about along the way, and is also bound to make himself subservient to other people, those who are able to procure these things for him or deny them to him. And if finally, when he gets up in the morning, he keeps to and observes these principles, bathes as trustworthy and self-respecting person, eats as a trustworthy and self-respecting person, putting his guiding principles to work on whatever material come his way, as a runner does in running and a voice trainer in his voice training. This is the one who's truly making progress, and the one whose journey here hasn't been pointless. But if his efforts are directed towards acquiring what can be got from books, if this is what he works at and what he hoped to gain by coming here, I suggest that he go back straight home and stop neglecting his affairs there, because he left home for nothing. No, a student shouldn't apply himself to ridding his life of gloom and grief, cries of Alas and poor me, misery and wretchedness, and to learning what death, exile, prison, and hemlock really are, so that while in prison he's able to say, well, Citro, if this is what the gods want, so be it, and not pity me in my old age. Was that what I kept going for until my hair was gray? Who talks like that? You ask, thinking I'll reply with the same name of some obscure and lowly individual. But doesn't Priam speak that way, and Opidius? Don't all the kings there have ever been speak that way? Isn't this exactly what tragedies are? Versified portrayals of the suffering of people who valued externals. I mean, even if it took deception for one to learn that externals, things that aren't subject to will, are nothing to us. Speaking for myself, I'd want to be deceived like that. As if a result, I'd be living a life of contentment and tranquility. As for what you want, that's for you to decide. So what can we learn from Cyprus? If you want to know, he says that those things are not false, from which contentment ensues and equity comes. Take up my books, and you'll discover that those things that deliver me from turmoil and passion are in compliance and harmony with nature. What great good fortune, and what a great benefactor is he who shows us the way. And yet, although people have established shrines, altars, triptomias all over the world because he gave us our nourishment in the form of cultivated crops, they have not done so for the man who discovered, published, and made available to all of us the truth that gives us not merely life, but a life lived well. I mean, have any of you raised an altar to him or a temple? Have any of you dedicated a cult statue to him? Do any of you bow down before gods in gratitude for him? We prefer sacrifices to the gods for their gifts, or vine and wheat. But they have also brought forth this wonderful fruit in human mind, by means of which they wanted us to see the truth about happiness. Shall we not thank God for this? And I'm just going to stop it right there.